art can mean different things to different people. For me, it's all about the joy of creating. So if you draw, paint, write, dance, sing, craft, play air guitar, or even sculpt using nothing but mashed potatoes, consider yourself an artist and join the conversation. For the next half hour, meet the artist, learn about their inspiration, and enjoy the beauty of creativity. Welcome to Art Talk with John Cole Artist. Well, good evening, everyone. It's John Cole Artist, and today is Tuesday, September 26th. This is the last Tuesday in September. Can you believe it?
I can believe it.
That means Halloween's right around the corner.
It is.
And the funny thing is, I think it was, what was this? 22nd was the first day of fall this year, right? And on the 21st in Massachusetts, it was like 80 degrees. And on the next day, it was down to 50. So I don't know how that happened, Kristi, but it did. So everyone, I want to introduce you to Kristi Ferrise. She is a really good friend of mine. She is a life coach. She's a artist, and she's also a retired school teacher. So we're going to get taught tonight, aren't we?
No, I'm retired.
Awesome. So Kristi, I was hoping, well, first of all, I want to say thanks everybody for tuning in tonight, and hello to those folks watching the replay. You guys are just as important to me as the folks that watch live. So thank you for that. So Kristi, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to our audience, I think that would be awesome.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for having me. I am a retired teacher as of January, and it was early retirement, and I've decided to take a different path with life coach. And now I'm kind of taking a little turn and going back to art and introducing art therapy into my programs. And I'm using this year just to kind of play around with everything I've wanted to know more about, and realizing that as an art teacher, you've done a lot with art therapy. You just didn't know it. So instead of following, state standards, we're talking about feelings and emotions, and it's pretty cool. It's kind of fun to see it all come together.
Right. Is that with adults then? Right.
It could
is that
be
what you're looking at, or
the certification was on from age 1 to even elderly with dementia.
Oh, okay.
Different types of dementia. So my mom has dementia, and that's kind of been intriguing me. And then, I used to teach kindergarten for 15 years. So I go back to that developmentally stage 2. And then I taught high school art.
Mm-hmm.
And I really saw the need for some ways to help the students communicate, and you can communicate through art. So that was a beautiful thing to dive into that and get creative and just see where it goes.
Absolutely. Well, we could start by saying hello to Christine Cole. She's online. She says, hello, beautiful souls.
Hi, Christine.
And thank you, Christine, for watching. I think Christine has been my biggest fan so far. I think she's seen every episode I've done.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, art therapy, I don't think that's a subject that I've talked with anybody about, because that's not a subject I know too much about. So what exactly is that? I mean, what's your definition? Let's put it this way. Is there a standard definition or what?
There's a broad definition, but I can definitely narrow it down for you. It gives someone a way to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can't say what's troubling them, or if they don't know what to do, just the art, the fact of coloring back and forth and giving them a prompt. So it's kind of like journaling, like writing.
Okay.
They're allowed to dive in more between the conscious and the unconscious, and things start to come out. And then the beauty in art therapy comes when the artwork is done. Then you talk about it and you ask them questions.
Okay. So it's it sounds to me almost like it could either be an alternative to what journaling would be if you were of the writing kind, right?
Certainly. It's a different way to communicate.
Yeah. And then would also, or could augment too, right? I mean, you could have the journaling piece, and then you maybe use art as a form of expanding on that, or maybe digging even deeper, right?
All of those things. And the beautiful thing that triggered, like, oh, wow, that's so neat, is that art is a way of taking something and manipulating it or trying new things and seeing it grow and expand and get better. And that within itself is a beautiful thing because you're creating just by trying, and art allows you to do that. And that gives you a successful feeling that, oh, I can do something.
Right. What about folks that, I mean, because this seems to be a common thing that I've heard from people. I don't want to do art, or I don't want to go down this road because it's too hard.
Oh my goodness, that brings up something beautiful in this whole process. This year's been amazing. Full year of growth. I was on a survivor chat group, and someone just randomly said, oh, I drew this. I don't know why. I don't know where it came from. Can anyone help me? And I looked at the drawing and I was like, oh, it's interesting. It looks like two sweater hands with some fringe in the end. And, there's some people at the bottom. And I was just like, I was jealous, because this person said, oh, it's a horrible drawing. And I was like, I don't think it's horrible. I think there's a message in there. And this was before I went through the classes and learned more about it. Someone in the chat said, by any chance, were you involved with the 9/11 Twin Towers? Ooh, I just got chills because this person said, yes, I was a child and I was in the lobby. And I didn't get the full details of his involvement with the Twin Towers. But when I started to look at his art, I responded to him and I said, this is the most beautiful example of inner child art when you don't think you're a good artist at all.
Right.
Your inner child in you is just going to draw what they see. And there was so many details, like there was fire at the top. It looked like fringe. There were people at the bottom. There were some clocks. He said that I guess there were some famous artworks in the lobby that he related to. And I'm not his coach, but I really wanted to dive in and ask more questions. But I just told him that I love that you showed this, even though you thought it was horrible, because that's how you learn and grow, and you share, and then you feel safe, and then it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. That idea of being able to feel free enough to express yourself, and again, I think what you're suggesting is important. And that is it doesn't have to be the Mona Lisa. You know what I mean? And that's something that I tend to beat myself up on all the time, right? It's this idea of, well, if it's going to be a dog, I want it to look like a dog, when in reality, maybe it doesn't need to be. Maybe that's really not what your subconscious needs it to be, because maybe there's a message there. If I draw an animal,
why did you draw the dog with this? What is the dog? What's next to the dog? And their subconscious, without knowing it, will put it on there, and that's part of their whole message, which is beautiful. Like, tell me more about your drawing.
Right. Yeah. And that the inner, specifically that inner child piece, because I know that seems to come up quite often with some of the other folks I've talked to over the last, 8 months or so. I think there's two parts of that. I think the first part is from an inner child perspective. And I would argue that there's probably not a huge population out there that would even want to recognize that, because, we are such a strange nation right now. Right. But I think the fact of the matter is we do all have inner children, whether or not we acknowledge it or not. So I think part of that is allowing that inner child to express itself through something like art. And I also think the other part is, as an adult, there's value to the art, maybe not necessarily expressing as the child, but expressing that moment in time, right?
One of the lessons I've learned, and I can't wait to do this, and I'll just share it now because people can do this at home right now, is write a postcard to yourself. And then on the other side, draw a picture of what that means to you.
Right.
So what the beautiful thing is you write your message, like, what you need to hear, what you want to hear, ask yourself, what do you need? Why? And then as you're coloring, putting those messages in your head and focusing and basically meditating as you're drawing and coloring,
right,
allows you to build the new neurons. It allows you to kind of make that like an affirmative action, or just something that you're aware of that you can share and talk about and heal. I mean, it's so broad and it's so amazing at the same time.
Right.
Last year with your wife, we did a workshop on and it was based on inner child, and your lovely wife talked about the inner child and how to get her to explore more. And I didn't get it at the time, and I thought it was fascinating just seeing her work. And my first response was, "Oh, I could never do that. I'm not that kind of artist."
Right.
And my part was on just doing the Zentangles and like the mandalas and just the repetitive motion with an affirmative action involved allows you to really figure things out in an amazing way. So,
Right.
if you don't think you're a great artist, you can even look up Zentangles online, or you can look up, or just, draw, write a postcard to yourself, or draw a picture of your superhero. What's your superpowers and what's your weakness? How could you get destroyed? Like little things like that
Yeah.
allows you to like, well, okay, I can try. Yes, you can try. Anyone can try to draw,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. The key thing though with all of that, I think, would be the willingness to be able to do that. Because I think, again, and I hate to go back to this, but there's a very small percentage, I think, of the population that really want to look at that stuff, right? It's
And that goes along with the program that I would offer is if it's individual, it would
Mhm.
be completely based on that individual's needs, and you would
Right.
have different prompts, and you would find out their skill level, and you'd have to build up a relationship of trust so that they feel vulnerable to expand. The group sessions would be more about you learn from each other, and so you see the different talents and the different ways that they communicate through their art. And that's a beautiful thing because you're all kind of learning from each other. So
Right.
that's what I meant by a broad definition is it can be specialized to that individual in a one-on-one session, or you can give them homework to
Mhm.
work on something and then you can talk about it the next week, or a group session. And even then a group session can take different turns, whether it's like a therapeutic, like an AA session, or, some type of group that meets and they have something in common would look different than a group full of strangers.
Right. Right.
So you really have to pinpoint down what you think would work for them.
Mhm.
And you might actually find people that are artists and didn't know it, which I think is fabulous.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've got a Facebook private group that says we are all artists. So I
We
think
are.
fundamentally we are. So I do want to call out Jerry. Jerry's online. She says
Hey,
hello.
Jerry.
Want to make sure I didn't forget her. Yeah, I mean, I think that all that's interesting. And I tell you what, as you move forward, um, again, I think the challenge would be getting people to really have that willingness to look at themselves. I mean, we both know we've been through programs, coaching programs ourselves, and now you're sliding into that world, and there's always that resistance piece there. And really, ultimately, I think that resistance is just fear. Me being afraid to look at my own stuff can be as scary as me picking up a paintbrush for the first time, right? It's all the same response, right?
And this is when your intuition comes into play,
Mhm.
because I don't picture myself meeting someone for the first time, second week, saying, okay, today you're going to draw a cow. I
Right.
don't picture it like that. I picture, just trying to intuitively feel what they would need. How do you feel about drawing? How do you feel, and you'll feel them out. And um, I have such a plethora of information in my head that, and even just from teaching for so long, teaching art,
Mhm.
there's so many mediums, so many styles, so many ways to just allow someone to focus and meditate or get a little crazy. You would have to
Right,
get to
right.
know the person at the time and see what they want and what they need.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the teaching again, because I did have a question that popped into my mind as a teacher, right? And I'm not going to use the word retired because clearly you're still teaching. It might not be the same audience, but
True,
you're
very
doing it,
true.
right?
Yeah.
As a teacher, looking at the value of art right now, you've taught kindergarten, and then and what was it, middle school?
I taught kindergarten for 15 years, and
Yeah.
within those 15 years I taught K through 5th grade for 2 years,
Okay.
and then I taught high school art for the last 5 years.
Okay. So tell me what the value is of art in the classroom, and we'll focus on the older kids, right? Younger kids, I think, tend to be a little bit more creative naturally anyway, and I know the older we get, sometimes we pull away from that for whatever reason. So let me ask you, what is the real value of art in the classroom?
That is such a good question. And I think it's kind of missed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to compare my program to any other program out there. We're a small rural town. We don't have a lot of funding, so it was really, based on donations and stuff like that. But it all goes with your age group. With the kindergartners, they're learning to become more realistic in their drawings. And as a teacher, you teach them, oh, we have a face, and oh, where's your neck? Oh, we need to draw a neck, and
Right.
and oh my goodness, they have no clothes on, he's naked, and they'll giggle and laugh. And it's just like they're still learning and their brain's still developing, and then we turn those into sentences. It used to be draw a picture of a cat. And then I would put on the board, I would write a sentence. I see a black cat on a log. I would pick very simple sentences, and the students had to read it and then draw it. Right. So they were doing like the reading and the writing and the drawing and then putting it all together and making it make sense, which is where their brain development was from 5. And, and then with the older kids, 2nd grade, I had this amazing lesson with cardinals, and we started off just with we did watercolor because it was a very easy medium to use with the elementary kids and not messy. We did a triangle for the head, an oval for the body, a trapezoid, I can't remember now, triangle for the head, trapezoid for the tail. And they just did those 3 shapes together, and then we added the beak and the eye and then the branch. And that was like my favorite lesson that I did with 2nd graders. Right. And then with, as they get older and their brains developing, this was 4th and 5th graders. I said, okay, we're just going to commit. We're going to draw an eagle. And they just looked at me like, what? And so we just started with the eyes, the iris and the colors. And then we just did watercolor again. Let's do some dark feathers and do the shape of the face. And does it have ears? And, look at the details. And I had some of my best artists come out during that lesson I was able to reteach when they were seniors in high school. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, that is cool.
And then you get your high schoolers where some of them, they have to take art to graduate.
Right.
So you had to deal with, why am I here, miss? You're killing me. Why are you making me draw this? And I have kind of a funny story if I can digress a little bit. Sure. Those that know will know what I'm talking about. And if you know me, you'll know what it's probably about. But one year I had this kid that I kind of like those challenging personalities because it makes me laugh. I'm like, okay, come on, get it out. And then let's get focused on your grade and what you need to do. And he drew a mushroom.
Okay.
And it was funny. I was like, okay, here we go. It seemed to be the same time of year when the mushroom would appear. And I decided to take another spin with it. And I said, this is the best mushroom I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. And so I put it up on the wall, and he was mortified because he's like, I can't believe she doesn't know what it is. And so the next day I said, okay, let's talk about, we're all going to paint this mushroom as this person did. I said, look how he did the roots and look how he did the stem, and, and it must be raining or something. And it was so freaking funny to see him sweat through it. Mm-hmm. But the kids ended up painting and not even learning that they were doing art. So, that's the kind of fun and the creativity you have to have with teaching the older kids if they don't want to be there. Right. How can you inspire them to have a little fun and explore?
Yeah. 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 I think, I agree with all that. And I love that story was awesome. It really was.
I still laugh about it.
Yeah. But I mean, when I took art in high school, I think the one thing that was missing for me during my high school years specifically, because I don't remember ever taking art when I was small. I just don't remember that. But I think what was missing was that connection to self. And it sounds to me that, the way that you were teaching it, whether or not it was kindergarten or not, I mean, not only is there lessons about how to make connections with language and things like that, which is super important, right? But also to look at things from different perspectives and use that creative side that we have to it's like those paint and sips or whatever they're called that people do, right? I mean, there's value to that when people go do that. And it's not the wine, I'm not talking about the wine itself, but that idea of being able to see something and then painting your interpretation of it. So when you posted this kid's thing up, I'm sure you got half a dozen different things, right? You
Oh,
know what I mean?
yes, definitely.
So, and speaking of art, I would like to show our audience some of your art if you're up for it. Maybe you could
Sure,
talk a
let's
little
do
bit.
it.
All right. So Kristi had sent me a whole, basically a small portfolio, and I pulled out some of the pieces that really called to me or talked to me. So this first one here is watercolor, Kristi?
This was one of my first watercolors I attempted to do, and it was a group class.
Mhm.
And, I just talked about the images and the gesture of a person in the background. Like if you zoom in, it doesn't look like a person, but from far away it does. And,
Right.
I can look at it now and say, oh, I should have done this. And I would love, thanks, Christine. I see that there. I would love to repaint this now that I've grown. This was when I first started dabbling with watercolors. And, then the silly me, I had to throw my husband's boat in the background. And, it's way off of proportions, but I had a little fun with it. But I learned shadowing and, the darkness of the dark sides of the inside of the boat. And, I thought it was horrible. Now that I look, I'm like, okay, it's not so bad.
No, it's not bad at all. Actually, it's funny when you mentioned throwing in did you put the boat in towards the end of the painting?
We did the background first,
Right.
which
So
in
that,
watercolor, that's difficult because you had to paint around the boat. You had to know, um,
yeah, I only asked that because it reminds me of that time. And speaking of high school art, see, watercolor was never my forte. So when I look at this, I'm like, this is awesome. Me and watercolor have never gotten along for some reason. But it reminds me back in high school, I did this, what I thought was this beautiful, like scene like this, right? Maybe not with a boat, but it was like a pond and I had these trees and I'm like, that looks really good. And then I went and ruined it by throwing the freaking Loch Ness monster in there. It's like, dude, what are you thinking?
I could show you how many times I've repainted watercolor art.
Yeah.
And, it's slowing down, concentrating, which, it's kind of interesting that I say that because teaching watercolor to the elementary school was like a disaster waiting to happen. But just have fun with it. And, you don't have to have everything look like it's touching. You can have a little bit of gap there, just forgiving yourself and let's just take it for what it's worth and learn from it,
Yeah. But that is a nice painting. And then this one is and you told me before we got on what this plant is.
It's a bromeliad.
Okay.
When I taught art at the elementary school, I had a group here, the Florida Keys Watercolor Society. They adopted me. And the lady that was running the society at the time, she would have me come to her house and we would just draw or paint plein air, random things. It was so intimidating. And this was my first bromeliad plant that she had in a pot. I mean, I noticed that there's no pot there, but that's kind of funny. But yeah, it was just, I love that little, looks like it's a drop on that top leaf there on the left. That's the beauty of watercolor is it takes on its own direction and you just accept that and run with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think sometimes the things that at the time might seem like a mistake because you're looking for something specific turns out to actually improve what it is that you're doing.
Beautiful.
So
yeah.
I think it was Bob Ross, right? Happy accidents.
Happy accidents. Yes.
Now I put this in here because Kristi, you were in the newspaper, which when you sent this and I looked, I'm like, that has got to be the coolest thing.
It was pretty cool to be recognized because, the art program is just an elective and, you get the kids in there sometimes that don't want to learn and then you get the kids that want to learn. And it was nice to be appreciated.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I think, is that anywhere where people could read that or is this just something in your own personal collection?
Well, it's on the internet still with the keysweekly.com.
Oh, okay. Keysweekly.com, folks, if you're interested. And when was this?
This was
it was during COVID.
It was during COVID, so probably 2021.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's neat. And in a second, folks, you're going to see that. I think we see that dolphin picture again. But
yeah.
And Christine writes, "I love your paintings."
Oh, thank you.
And Jerry gave you 3 hearts, not just 1 or 2, but 3. So nice.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, they're really pretty. All right. Oops, wrong button. Sorry about that, folks. I'm moving between monitors. All right. These are 3 charcoal drawings, and they're not recent, right?
No, this was 1984 when I was in high
19.
school.
Wow.
My grandma was an amazing artist. She taught us charcoal, and I just remember going to her house and she just took us aside. And I think my brother Keith and I were the ones that we must have paid attention more because we still do it to the day. But yeah, she taught me. I love that horse because the shadowing on his face and even the veins. Like, how did I know how to do that?
Sure.
So it's just. And then I remember with the otters, I'm like, Grandma, do I have to draw every single hair? And she
Yeah.
was like, well, it's detailed, but you can, smudge some and make it look like hair. And, it just, I did. And I love that fox. It's just so funny that now I'm learning about animals and their spiritual meaning.
Right.
I just love this kind of stuff. My parents had this encyclopedia. It was a huge book. And it was all, and realize now it was watercolors, but it was all about each animal of the world and what the animal's known for.
Right.
And most of my paintings were based off of animals in that encyclopedia. And I found it online. I might splurge and get it just to kind of, that inner child in me would love to have that again. Because I don't know what happened to it. But yeah, animals were my first passion as far as painting, and not painting, but drawing.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think they're good for 1984. That's awesome. Yeah. Now, well, let me let me ask you one question. This popped in my head when you said this. You said your grandmother was an amazing artist.
Uh-huh.
So what about your mother?
She dabbled a little bit. She was a seamstress. Her
Okay.
art was sewing. She took some classes later on with my aunt, her sister,
Hmm.
and played around with it. She wasn't too excited about it.
Right.
But she does talk about an ocean with waves that she did that she was quite proud of, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. Well, I only ask that because, or I bring that up because I don't necessarily think that artistic talent is inherited, but I will say, because my mother she was a member of an art guild when we were small, and she used to do all kinds of stuff, painting and pastels. But what I'm saying is that when you have somebody in your family that's willing to invest their time to guide you, to maybe promote, maybe promote's not the right word, but to encourage your artistic side, I think that really can help you moving forward in life, because I think that whole idea of being able to be creative, even if you're in a job that isn't necessarily creative, like being a mechanic or something like that, I think that can really foster additional growth in addition to what school provides. So,
And this was what I wanted. And I see Karen's comment there. Thank
yeah,
you,
Karen
Karen.
Thomas, she says Kristi is amazing, and I agree.
I visualized my art class to be this safe place
Right.
that I felt like when I was drawing with my grandma. She was pretty harsh, and she was a perfectionist, which teaching kindergarten taught me to not be a perfectionist.
Right.
So I just love how everything's lined up to have me teach art.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, and I don't know when we can talk about that, but I did have an amazing art lesson that talked about neurons
Hmm.
and what they physically look like in a microscope. And we attempted to, do a fun little line drawing and then connect all the intersections with globs that look like glue,
Right.
like neurons look like in a microscope. And I have to say that class, it was a high energy class, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
And there was complete silence for 20-30 minutes of them just drawing and coloring. And it was the most spectacular moment in my high school classes, where every single kid, even the ones that didn't want to draw and paint and thought it was stupid, they were doing it. And
Right.
they turned out really good.
Yeah. And yeah, is that something? So when did you do that particular thing?
It was a few years ago
Yeah.
when I first met you.
Yeah.
And I was always looking into new lessons and what to do. And I learned this from another art teacher.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. I'm going to put a little spin on it with watercolor.
Yeah.
And now in this practitioner's class that I just took, they talk about how that kind of art with the elderly and
Mhm.
specifically those with memory loss can
Right.
help them build neurons and it's a stretch, but it could slow down the process of dementia because you're building, and there's different kinds of dementia, but this one that basically starts killing off the neurons, this can help build new ones. So I thought that was very interesting. And
Yeah.
I saw it firsthand with my high school students. So there's definitely some things I want to explore in that with, I don't know, I have a wide range of ages to work with, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, I think you've got a pretty wide, yeah, you could draw in a lot.
I have a lot to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to learn, but you have a lot to offer, and I think that combination right there is, setting you up for basically doing whatever it is that you want to do, you know what I mean? And
It's a
that's
beautiful thing. It's
it's
seeing
awesome,
it come together is beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. So Lucinda's on, Lucinda Bentley, she's
Oh,
been on
hey,
my show a
Lucinda.
couple times, and matter of fact, she's gonna be on again soon, but we'll talk about that later. Um, and then, of course, Lucinda says dolphins, because these are 2 acrylic paintings, and these are the dolphins that were in the newspaper, right?
And these are dolphins from the Dolphin Research Center where
Oh,
I
yeah.
used to work with
Yep.
Cindy. So she appreciates them. Like, anyone that knows the dolphins at Dolphin Research Center would know that that's Tercy because her mouth's open. She always screamed when she jumped. So this was my first acrylic painting on my own. I was
Mhm.
playing with the water and the movement, and dolphins are hard to paint because they have so many details, but they're blurred. So they really have to be blended. So
Right.
and the mangroves in the back and the water splashing. It was fun. I like this painting. It was fun to do.
Yeah, and I think that the palm tree, we talked briefly about that. That really is, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on the program. It's probably one of the best painted palms I've ever seen. I'm just saying.
And
It's
thank you for
really, really
saying
good.
that because with my classes, we only have 50 minutes and we're going to do a palm tree today. And
Mhm.
we'd focus on the palm fronds and the wind and the shadowing. And, let's look at the palm trees across the street. What do they look like? And I said, okay, that does it. We're going to sit down and we're going to do one together and we're
Mhm.
going to learn. I'm going to learn with you. We're going to make this work. And a very well-known artist down here in the Keys is very good at doing clouds and palm trees. And so I blew up one of her paintings and a palm tree. And I specifically painted and focused on every detail of, and I just love this. It's small. I think it's on my wall back there, but it's only like a 6x6 maybe.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I think it's gorgeous. And
Thank you.
let's close out our portfolio review for Kristi Ferrise with this.
Oh, Merlin.
This is a pet portrait.
This is my newest passion. I have a dear friend, Karen Thomas, who runs Peyton's Promise Sanctuary, and
Mhm.
I get to go volunteer there as much as I can. And she is hospice for dogs. So she rescues dogs that are unadoptable, dogs that are on death row. They don't think there's any hope for them. They don't believe anyone would want them. They put them on death row and they just kind of wait to die. And
Right.
Karen rescues these dogs and she's a registered nurse. So it's a miracle to see. I just got chills because it's a beautiful thing what she does there at the sanctuary. And I thought, how could I honor what she does? Ooh, I can get teary eyed because it's a beautiful thing that she does.
It is.
And
It is.
I'm like, well, I'm going to try to paint them. So I started off with Bubba's, who passed away in August. That was pretty hard, but he lived the best year of his life at the sanctuary, and I got to know him very well. And I was able to capture him and his personality. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to commit to paint every single one of the dogs there at the sanctuary. So I'm up to 10 now.
Mhm.
She just got a new dog. So we're going to wait for Tanner to heal up a little bit so I can get a really good picture just to show how amazing he is. And
Yeah.
yeah, so this is like my new passion. And you were saying what did you do here? And how come that paw is in front? And
Right, right. It's a really interesting technique that you used on this.
yeah, I did something different. It just came to me. I painted the dogs and then I cut them out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I painted the background and I raised it so that when the light changes in the room, the shadow changes.
Yeah.
that was my vision anyway. And then when I started framing them, I had a little fun with the matting, and I tried to do like layers to make it look like they were coming out of the painting. So yeah, they're
Karen says she's beyond grateful as well.
It was from the heart, and I loved doing this for her.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's gorgeous. And speaking of Karen, I really ought to get Karen on this show, because I think what she can talk about is really the art of taking care of animals, because I think there is an art to that. There's a science, granted, but I think it takes a very special person to be willing to do that. So thank you to Karen for that. And thank you for offering your time to not only paint the portraits, but volunteer your time to help these animals. Because you're right. Nobody wants to be alone at the end. And she's doing something that's really, I think, special to them, and special to all of us too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've learned so much beings, whether they're animal or human, and we're all so different, and we all have our little quirks and problems, but if we just love and see them for their potential and how amazing they are and what gifts they offer, the world could be a better place.
I absolutely agree. We are now at 36 minutes.
Wow.
And I could probably talk to you all night.
I feel like I could talk some more too.
Yeah. So promise me you'll come back sometime and we can talk more.
Sure.
Awesome.
I would love to. Once I dive in more to art therapy, maybe we'll do a little group lesson on here or something.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah. I think talking more about it, making people aware of what these different options are, and what they really mean, so that there's no confusion, because you might hear it and think it's something like maybe they're going to stick you in a white room with a paintbrush for art therapy. Well, yeah, if you want to sit in a white room, go ahead and do it, but that's not really what we're talking about here.
It's so different, and it's not narrowed in this little box. It's huge.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to look up like your life coaching services or anything like that?
KristiFerrise.com is my website.
Okay. And
there's a link there to email me if you have any questions.
Okay.
That's the best way.
You're on Facebook. Are you on Instagram as well, or just Facebook?
I am, and all of those links are on my website as well.
Okay.
Instagram, Facebook.
Cool. Well, hopefully, folks, if you're listening and you're at least interested, check out her website. Kristi is an amazing soul, and I so appreciate you spending this time with me. I had an awful lot of fun. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Time flies when you're having fun, huh?
It does. It absolutely does. So until next time, folks, next Tuesday night, we'll be broadcasting again. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to have our Halloween special. I'm going to have Lucinda Bentley on with some former members of the Georgia Paranormal Society. And we're going to talk about the art of ghost hunting. And let me tell you, if Lucinda's initial conversation with me lives up, it's going to be one spooky show, and it's going to be a special 1 hour show, because we're going to have there's going to be like 5 people on there, but it's going to be amazing, folks. So hopefully you guys will mark your calendars and check it out. So again, Kristi, thank you so much. And if you could just hang on right after this, I'd appreciate that. In the meantime, folks, have a great evening. Thank you for listening. Thank you so very much for joining me on the Art Talk podcast, where it's my goal to bring artists together to talk about their craft. If you'd like to join me for a conversation, please reach out via email at johncoleartist@gmail.com or by visiting my website at johnrobertcole.com. So until next time, keep crafting, painting, and inspiring others with your creativity. You make more of an impact than you know. See ya.